Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another session of Hablemos Live. Today, we're going to have a beautiful conversation about inclusion, leadership, and purpose with a talented lady, talented woman that I have the honor of now knowing and getting to know even deeper after this conversation. I'm already planning my trip to Orlando because I need to meet her in person. It's worth having a wonderful conversation over coffee or mimosas or margaritas. Danielle, how are you today?
I'm so good, sis. How are you doing? Thank you for
I'm
having
excited.
me.
No, thank you for being here. I'm excited, truly excited. We were having a little bit of a chit chat before starting this conversation, and I know this is going to be a powerful session, something that not only female leaders, not only women need to hear, but everyone, right? Everyone needs to learn more about empowerment. And I
Absolutely.
love that you are that, a chief empowerment officer. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us more about you?
All right. Thank you. So I am officially an executive coach, and I say officially because, I've always been that, I say that sister, that girlfriend, that friend that people tended to come to and, ask my advice and just walk them through things. But I am an executive coach. I work with women of color who want to elevate their leadership and get more clarity, confidence, and empowerment as they level up. And so I help them to navigate barriers, overcome limitations, a lot of self doubt, a lot of mindset issues, and really create a leadership journey that aligns with their strengths and their values. And so instead of asking them, how do I fit into a box, letting them figure out what is the box that they want to be in. And so that's my privilege. And I'm so happy and joyful to be able to do that.
When is the right time to level up, Danielle?
Anytime, and I think we know it because, Brene Brown says that your body holds on to secrets, right? Your body
Mm.
does not forget. And so, anytime in your spirit, in your stomach, in your shoulders, whatever it is, where you start to feel an uncomfort and a discomfort that you can't get rid of. There's something in your head, there's a nagging, you can't let it go. And your body keeps reminding you this is not where you're supposed to be. You need to move up, you need to move on, you need to level up. So I think
Mm.
that for a lot of people, they start getting those clues. And sometimes they're external, when you are consistently denied or you are consistently overlooked, you are overworked. The stress is more than the paycheck. Those are indicators that it's time to change your circumstances and that you're ready for the next stage, whatever that looks like.
And what do you think it's the main fear that women start to feel about that change? Like why are we so inclined to fear? I always ask myself that question because there's a tendency to always think about what could go wrong instead of what could go right. So
Yeah.
how to eliminate that from our lives?
So I don't know what it is that is the difference because you can meet the most mediocre guy and he's like, I think I'm going to run for president. Right?
I know. I know. And
I'm
they
like,
look at themselves in the mirror and I'm like, you know what? I got what it
yeah,
takes.
yeah. He's like, I've been out of college for 2.5 years. I think I should run for president or I should be the general secretary at the UN. And then with women, we are like, can we check every single box that they ask for? And if we get 9 out of 10, we're like, oh, I'm not qualified enough.
Need to work on that 10th item. I
And
know.
we just focus on that 10th item that we don't have. And we obsess over the fact that not the nine that we did have, but we focus on that 10th item that we didn't have.
Is that, can we call that being a perfectionist?
I think it's partly being a perfectionist for a lot of us. Like, I know I'm a perfectionist, but I also think, here in the States, we have a society that does not encourage girls like it does boys, right? And so we know the research says that for girls, when it comes to math and science, up until about seventh grade, they often exceed their peers who are boys.
Mm-hmm.
But something around middle school happens, and then their scores drop off, their grades drop off, the interest drops off, and we just we raise our hands less, we speak up less, and so I think there's something in our culture here in this country that tells girls that after a certain age, that it's better to be pretty than smart, that
Mm.
it's better to be quiet than be considered outspoken. I know for women of color, there are the stereotypes about, either the loud, brash
Right.
Latina or the, angry Black woman. And so we're very mindful that people may be thinking of that. And so we self edit, we mute ourselves, we diminish ourselves, and we just believe that it's better to shine a little less brightly
Mm.
um, than the boys next door.
And it ties to what the message you sent you talked about earlier, where you said that we don't need to fit in, right? We're meant, and to your point, we're meant to shine bright. We're meant to do things out of the ordinary and in an authentic way. And
Mhm.
I think that's I would say, and I want to imagine that that's part of your why, and that's part of the work that you do, why you do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we all go through our journey, right? And it's an evolution, and we all get to certain parts at certain, at different times. For me, before I was an executive coach, I was a lobbyist.
Mm.
So what I loved about that was telling stories, the stories of the organizations that I represented. But when I knew it was time, right, when I had that feeling inside that it was time to move on, what I didn't want to move on from was the storytelling. However, the difference was I didn't want to tell their stories. I wanted them to tell their stories. I wanted, people who had been historically excluded or marginalized to feel empowered enough to use their own voice and to tell their own stories. And so that's what I sort of transferred from my days in advocacy and lobbying over into executive coaching. How to encourage and affirm and support women, especially women of color, to use their own voice, tell their own stories, and most importantly, make their own demands, right? So everything I did as a lobbyist for someone else, now I try to encourage and support women of color to do that for themselves.
That's beautiful. And why do you think that was made possible? Like, what experiences did you yourself go through that kind of shape you and put you in that path to help others?
You know, you said you were going to ask me this, and I've been thinking of this. And, there are lots of, seminal moments that people have, right? I don't know if they're still seminal if you have lots of them, but there are lots of big moments in your life. And
Important, important.
yeah, important. So I think for me, one of them, so I grew up in a predominantly white environment. The town that I lived in, the schools that I went to, it was me, it was my older brother, and then there was like maybe one or two other Black kids, like in the entire school. And
Wow.
so that was my experience. And then I went to a predominantly white undergrad university. But when I went for my master's, I attended Clark Atlanta University, which is a historically Black institution in Atlanta. And it literally changed everything. And it was one of the most important experiences that I had. One, I had never been around that many Black people outside of my family. And when you're, for me at least, to be amongst people who looked like me, there was a freedom in that and a joy in that I had never experienced. And my mentor used to tell us all the time, you're very privileged to be here, right? You're very privileged to be not only have a bachelor's degree behind you, but now you're in grad school. Like
Mm.
this is a privilege. And with that privilege It comes out of scripture. To whom much is given, much is required. And so he used to always tell us, what are you going to do with this privilege? How are you going to use your advantage to help someone else, particularly people of color, most especially Black people? And so that just changed everything about how I look at the world. And it it almost is hard for me to speak of because it was such an emotional experience. And then another thing happened while I was there. An internship became available with Atlanta Public Schools. They were looking for like a junior lobbyist, they called it. And I went down, I interviewed, and I had never been to the state capitol before.
Oh,
And
wow.
when I walked in, and it was just something really majestic about it. And I was a history undergrad, so I understood the importance of, civil rights legislation. And, for Black people in this country, so many of our rights came through policy and legislation. And a lot of that happened in Atlanta, right? That was the heart of the civil rights movement. And so to go into the Capitol in Atlanta, it was just like when I say the clouds parted and I heard angels. I don't know. There was just something about it. And so for me, it was an opportunity to marry this one side of me around, your responsibility to uplift your community, and the political side around this is the vehicle and the avenue that you're going to do it. And so those two experiences happened at the same time. And that's how I got into lobbying and advocacy, and recognizing that I need to use my voice and my privilege to affirm and uplift communities and marginalized people. So that was probably one of the most profound experiences, because it set me on a path that I'm still on and disrupted everything that came before it.
Danielle, that is such a powerful message, particularly the responsibility component, because I think that we all assume, leadership. It's about power. It's about leading people and telling them what to do, kind of, and shining, right, and the success, and yes, that's part of it. But the most important part is the responsibility, representing a group of people, right? Representing their needs, their voices, their stories. I don't know how you feel about that, but to me, it's a beautiful weight on your shoulders,
Oh, yeah.
but it's also a weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's also something I'm very aware and very conscious about. How do you feel about that?
I don't see it as a weight necessarily. I do see the privilege of it, and I see the opportunity in it. My grandfather, he passed away like 13 years ago, but he was, I don't remember how many siblings he had, but he had to drop out of school when he was like in third, fourth grade to go, and he had to start working. He lived in Florida. Had to have been in the late 1800s, probably early 1900s. So not a lot of opportunities for Black families in the state of Florida or in the South. But he knew enough to know that education was hugely important. And so when he and my grandmother met years later, the one thing that they were able to agree on the most was that their children were going to have an education, because education meant opportunity, which meant choices. And so he did any job and every job that he could to put my mother and her two sisters not only through college, but my aunt through med school. And the legacy that created was that their children went to college and went to grad school. So when I got my PhD, people were like, "Oh, that's so great. You're, the first one." I was like, "Actually, I'm not." I have two other PhDs who are cousins. I have a cousin who went to med school, cousins who went to law school. Most of us graduated, but it was because of that legacy and that choice that my grandfather made. And so to me, that's not a weight. That
Mm.
is that's an awesome, awesome responsibility and privilege that he made for me. And so if he could dig ditches, and he was afraid of water, but he would build bridges,
Oh, wow.
So if he can do that, then
There's
right,
no stopping you.
right. And so what am I really complaining about when it comes to what am I going to do for someone else? So
And how do you feel that you're fulfilling that responsibility currently?
mm, that's a good question. Um, I used to wonder about that because most of my work is one-on-one with my clients, and I'm like, "Ah, am I making enough of an impact? Should I be doing, this is America. It should be like bigger, brighter, better." um, but when I see how, and it's not just me, but when I see how my clients, when they are given, when they give themselves the opportunity to be their best, highest, most fullest self. And then, just like my grandfather made a choice for his family. They are making choices for their families, and they are creating legacy from that. And so the next client is making choices and creating legacy and choices from that for their families. So I feel like by supporting these women, and giving them a safe space to really dig into and imagine their biggest possibilities, um, they are going to change the world, or they're going to create children who are going to change the world, or
Mhm.
they're going to touch people. So so that's how I see it. Yeah. So
I love that because it ties to what we discuss around changing the world is not necessarily changing the whole country or the whole continent this big, like you said, bigger, bolder. It's more about, it also means changing perspective of one
yeah,
person, and that one person helping change the perspective of others, and like you said, molding those future generations, and hopefully spark something in them that will last through new generations and next
yeah,
generations.
yeah. Like Michael Jackson said, the man in the mirror. Like that's who you start with. So yeah,
That's who we start with.
right.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have to fill our cup, to be able to share with the rest, right? With
Yeah.
those around us.
And women don't do that very much. We don't fill our cup. We pour from empty cups all the time. We disregard our body when it says to rest.
Mm.
You know this.
We talk about that the rest.
We don't take care of ourselves. We don't nourish ourselves. We think that it's our responsibility to take care of everyone, and we are the last one on the list, and we constantly keep bumping ourselves down, bumping ourselves down. So, yeah,
That is part of one of, I mean, that's one of our limiting beliefs.
yeah.
How, and based on your experience, how do we fight those limiting beliefs? How do we, what are we, how can we start changing that mentality?
I think it starts with recognizing what are the consequences if you don't, right? So, when you're constantly sick, when
Mm.
your body is constantly sore, when you don't move as fast, when you can't do as much, that's because you're not resting. Your body is telling you to slow down, right? Your body is telling you to just take 10 minutes a day and just breathe and be still. And so showing women to recognize this is what pouring from an empty cup looks like, right? You're an example of that,
Hmm.
of when, you're giving your last bit of energy, and all you could do at the end of the night is just like literally fall into bed, and you've done nothing for yourself. That is what um, the lack of self care looks like. And we often don't think about it, right?
Right.
Because we're so used to taking care of the kids, taking care of our partners. At work, we get a lot of those caretaker responsibilities, right? Like, oh, Deb, can you plan a party? Can you get the cake? Can you get the coffee? Can you organize this, right? not with any money attached to it, right? But you do all of these caretaking things. And so we allow ourselves to just keep taking on, taking on, taking on. And, Jan Levinsky says it the best about it's not selfish. When you prioritize yourself, it's self-full. And I
Mm.
love that quote. And I share that every chance that I get because women need to recognize that, it's just like when you're on a plane, right? And they say, put the mask on yourself. It's the same thing. And my clients are like, oh, I'm like, yeah, like Southwest isn't brilliant for thinking. And so it's just how do you get through life? And you have to take care of yourself, and you can't do it when you're depleted and you have no energy. And yeah.
Danielle, there's a lot of women that I talk to and they feel guilty because they're not working all the time. And they actually, it's interesting because I've heard from women saying, no, I work all the time. And so I'm doing a great job because I'm working and working and working. But then I get home and I'm done. Like I can't even move. But they're proud about working nonstop, which I understand for some people it's very fulfilling and but it goes back to what you just mentioned, giving yourself some grace, giving yourself some time to recover, putting yourself first. That is so, so, so important nowadays and every day, right?
Yeah.
And not only for our bodies to recover, for our brains to recover, our minds, our souls, but also what type of message are we sending to the people around us, right? Our
Yeah.
kids, our children, our parents, our grandparents, whomever is around us, our families.
And are we really even doing it better? Like you look at other countries, right? You look at Europe, you look at South America, where they take these, 2, 3 hour siestas in the middle of the day and they just shut down and whatever you're going to do, but you're not going to be at work. And they're still just as productive, right? They're still making as much money. So why is it in this country we have, internalized this idea that if you're not working nonstop, then you are what? You're lazy.
Yeah.
You're not
Less valuable.
yeah, you're not valuable, right? Like we've tied our value and our worth into billable hours. And that does just is not sustainable.
Right.
And the research shows, like you can look at any other country, so-called first world country, and they don't do it like that. They're not killing themselves over there. So what is it about us in this country that makes us think that we have to do it?
So much work to do. And obviously you've worked with many women throughout the years. What is the biggest story of success that you can share with us? And maybe if there's a story of not so much success and maybe things were different than what you had planned, but share with us that what are those stories that you feel proud of?
Um, I don't think there's one biggest one, but I'm so proud of when my clients find their own voice and they are like, you know what, the path that I'm on is not the path that I want. I want to do something different, and they claim and own their own stories. So for example, I was working with a young woman who was a woman of color, and she was working in a white-led nonprofit. Absolutely miserable. She was miserable for a whole lot of reasons, but one of the primary reasons is because she was doing something that was antithetical to what her dreams were. It had nothing to do with, this idea in her head of who she really wanted to be and what she wanted to do. And so taking her step by step, sort of dismantling this idea that of the work that she was supposed to do, right? Listening to other people's expectations and really digging into, if you could do anything in the world, what would you want to do? And getting her to just imagine, just imagine. Like, let's not worry about the how. Let's just imagine all of the things that are possible. Like when you were 5 years old, what is it that you were wanting to do? And she was able to sort of go back and retrace and reimagine what it is that she really wanted to do. And then, so that was the first step. and then getting her to like slowly take steps moving in that direction. And so the day that she resigned was probably the best day of her life. And I was super happy for her because she was, for the first time, I think possibly, doing what she wanted to do. And she wasn't worried about what her parents thought or what
Mm.
anybody else's expectations were. She's like, this is my dream. It's a little less money, but I'm happy. And that idea of that sense of fulfillment was just so cool to watch and to know that she didn't have to wait 30 years. So many of us will stay in something that we know doesn't sit with our spirit, but we do it for a whole lot of reasons. But she was young enough to say, you know what? I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna create a different path, a different legacy. So those are my favorite kind of stories.
Do you think it's possible to create your new story, the version that you want to see of yourself out there, even within the world that you're in right now and within the circumstances? Maybe that organization that you're a part of, it's not the one that you see yourself in, or but the circumstances that you're there for a reason, whatever that is. But you want to build something. Can you build it within those constraints and those limits, but also looking at the opportunities that you can build for yourself?
Um, yeah, yeah,
that
I,
that's kind of like
yeah,
yes.
yes. I mean, of course, that's possible. I think what I try to stress with my clients is recognizing within your current circumstances what is possible and what's not. And so when it's not possible, understanding when it's time to get up and leave, right? And I think that's a really difficult choice for people to leave a situation that you may not like it may not be fulfilling, but it's a sure thing and it's familiar, right? So leaving the familiar and doing something outside of your comfort zone is just a really huge leap for a lot of people. But if you decide, but I always encourage my clients, what is making you unhappy or what is not being fulfilled in your current situation? Sometimes it's how you show up. Sometimes it's feeling like you can bring your more authentic self. Sometimes it's, being a better advocate for yourself. So that's why I was kind of like, it depends. And I hate that as an answer, but it depends. Sometimes, yes, your current situation can be changed in a way that it works for you. But I also don't want women to feel like they have to make it work, right? And that it's their responsibility to make stuff work that is just completely outside of their control. And I think that's what makes so much of us crazy is we want to fix other people and we want to fix problems that aren't ours to fix. And that's when I'm like, girl, it's time to get up. Love is no longer being served in this situation, and it's time to go.
In So that change that you're talking about in leaving a situation, whatever that situation is, it
Mhm.
doesn't come naturally for everyone, and it obviously the change. Not everybody is ready for a change. Not everyone is comfortable with that. What are your words of encouragement, or what's your process? What's the best advice that you can give those who who want to leave that situation and step away from that because they know it's not healthy for them? But tell us about the how do you recommend that them doing it?
Yeah. So not everybody can make the big leap, right? Not everyone can be like, the
I'm
how,
out of here.
right, where they make this big grand gesture about how they quit. Not everyone
Right.
can do that, right? So if that's not you, which is fine, then let's do this in increments, right? Let's do this in small steps because um, confidence is, to me, it's a series of courageous acts, right? And it's retraining or building that muscle of courage, of confidence. And so let's take one little step. Maybe let's pull out the resume and let's revamp the resume. Let's start having informational interviews with people in the industry or the field that you're interested in. Like, what are some baby steps that you can take that are doable, slightly uncomfortable, but very much doable to keep you so you can build momentum to get to that step where you need to make a bigger leap. And I think people want to just wake up and feel confident. And I don't find that's really how it works. I think you do you're a little bit more courageous every single time. And that is what gives you confidence.
It's a muscle too, right? It's you have to do it little by little, and then once you realize that, oh, okay, I can take on over, I can do anything and take over the world.
And understanding what is the story, the belief, right? Because mindset is huge, right? Mindset will keep us trapped forever. So what are you telling yourself about why you can't move on? And so let's dig into that, and then let's figure out how to dismantle that belief.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about loyalty, because
All right.
I feel that women are too loyal,
Yeah.
extremely loyal. And
Because we
that's
believe
why
in potential, right? We believe in potential, and we believe if we just keep giving them one more
chance,
the
but
potential
it doesn't work that way.
got.
And that applies to work, relationships, you name it. We're always thinking, no, it's gonna get better. I know this person, or I know this company, or I know this team. It's gonna get better, and you keep going at it, keep going at it. When is it time to say, you know what? It's time to leave. When can we say, it's do we have to go back again to what you mentioned, those clues that our body is sending us, that little, the devil and the angel just talking to us, and we have to listen to one or the other more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think but most women are just nurturers. And we just, I think a lot of us honestly believe if we can love you to be better, we can love you so that you will do right by us. And if I just keep loving you enough, you will. And if you don't, it's because I haven't done something, right? And so that's how we stay. And a lot of it is our personal relationships, but how we are at home, often mirrors how we are, in our work life. And so, so that's what we think. If I just love you, love you, love you. And so how do you know when it's time to leave the table? I don't believe that we don't know. I just believe that we just ignore it. So there's two little things on our shoulders. Like one is us, like one is a little mini us. Usually it's our inner child. And the other is not the devil, but it's the person who wants to keep us trapped because it's for their benefit. And so learning to listen to your intuition and to the quiet voice that you hear, if you believe in a greater creator, listening to that. But not the devil, because the devil's not real. The devil is the person who just wants to keep you trapped, right? And so learning to distinguish the two of them and tapping into your own power. We often underestimate just how fierce and powerful we are. And listening to that part of us is how we know. So I don't believe that we don't know. We just don't listen.
Do you think part of that too is fear of failing? That we don't listen, or that we pretend we don't listen?
So I think it's really hard to distinguish fear of failure and fear of success, right?
Oh, fear of success.
So they're almost, they're two sides of the same coin. And so part of it, yes, we're afraid to go out there and fail on some spectacular stage, right? Even though most people aren't even checking for us. Like most people do not care what but so there's that. So there's fear of failure. But I'm big on my pop culture quotes, but Marianne Williamson talks about the fear is really about being your most powerful self and letting your light shine. That is what we are more afraid of. And
Because we're gonna get judged.
no, not so much judged, but it's almost like we're being afraid of how bright and powerful we could really be, right? Um,
And that's scary for some.
that's scary for a lot of people, right? Especially if you've been in the shadows for so long, if you have been diminished for so
Mm,
long, to then think the flip side of that is, oh my God,
it's too much.
it's too much for a lot of people. And it's unfamiliar. And so the fear of failure, fear of success, I think the thing that connects them is the unfamiliarity. I think I'm making up words today, but the lack of familiarity, right? And moving outside of our comfort zone. Um, because everything, whatever you're afraid of, right? Whether it's fear of success or failure, it's on the other side of that. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's just a lot for people to wrap their heads around. And if you don't have a network or a circle of friends or family who are cheering you on and affirming you and encouraging you to do all of that lifting by yourself, when you're not used to it, that's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
even more scarier. So what's your message to the women out there who have that little light and it's probably not as powerful as it should be or it can be? What's your message to them, and also the ones that are already probably very aware of their voices and their power, and they're living through it, and they're encouraging other women to also raise their voices and live their full potential?
I just encourage them to, the first step is always the hardest, right? Um, but once you make that first step, like the world literally will open up to you because I believe that the universe conspires um, to support you, to help you out. Like once you get super clear about what it is that you want for yourself out of this world, then the universe will help you to make that happen. But I just need you to be brave enough to just take that first step.
Mm. Brave enough to take that first step.
Brave enough to take that first step.
Danielle, I know that you work with women of color, empowering them, but you also work with organizations who want to empower their women, right? And hopefully provide them with resources for that professional path to succeed and to grow within their organizations. How does anyone reach out to you? How can they contact you if they're interested in some type of workshop or course or any services?
Yeah, so the easiest way is through my website, which is empowerherstrategies.com. And my email is hello@empowerherstrategies.com. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not 20 something, so I'm not on Instagram all the time. But it's Danny Prendergast _PhD. I'm also on LinkedIn. Like there are lots of ways, but the website is probably the easiest one to remember.
Perfect. And I love the fact that you do have a PhD, just because I know that all the pain and suffering and all the blood, sweat, and tears that takes. I don't have one, but I'm obviously I've connected with a lot of people who do, and thankfully, and because I know our numbers and we need more.
Yes.
But obviously, thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing and for your words of encouragement and the power that you share with all of us through your message. It's very encouraging to see those examples within our communities, to see those examples of success. So I commend you for the work that you're doing, and I thank you for the opportunity to have you here.
No, sis, I appreciate you sharing your platform and, letting us have this talk. And next time we need to do it over cocktails and
Yes, in Orlando preferably. But
yeah,
obviously, you're more than welcome to come to South Florida. I know you were in Fort Lauderdale, so you're very familiar with the area, and there's plenty of spaces, and there's so many women that I need to introduce you
yes,
to. But I'm going to start with whom I told you, my friend Samin in Orlando. There's beauty to be done amongst us. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
all right. Thank you both.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope that you took so much out of this conversation as much as I did, because it's been powerful and it's great to learn from Danielle, and also hopefully take those pieces of information, not think of the devil and the angel, but more of our inner child, and the other people who want to hold us back, out of fear. I do
Yeah,
believe it's out of fear.
yeah.
Thank you, Danielle. And thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.